ladies and gentlemen, we've invited first class, now we're inviting executive platinum, emerald, sapphire.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Crew Travel right here on Yachting International Radio. My name is Ria. I am your host, and I'm very pleased to welcome back the wondrous Lee Harris. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks, Ria. How about yourself?
Good, good. It's been an interesting week, but we won't go into that.
I mean, they usually are, to be fair. So why change the habit of a lifetime?
Well, you know, I got to say, for somebody who like literally is at home 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I think my life ends up being way more exciting than most other people's, with me not even having to step foot out of the house. So
I think you're right. Do you know what I think they should next do? The next reality TV series should just be a load of cameras in your apartment.
Oh my goodness, you know what? We were discussing this earlier. Can you imagine if I actually left the house, the kind of chaos that I could create?
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure we'll see the four horsemen of the apocalypse quite soon.
I have to mention that Crew Travel is brought to you weekly by Blue Marine Travel, who haven't lost a passenger since Lee Harris was born back in the 70s, which is a great thing considering you're in travel.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Right. So it's been another interesting week in travel. Of course, the good news is out of UK, there's been a change in quarantine rules.
There has, yeah. So the United Kingdom government has revealed that it is to scrap its quarantine requirement for those who've been fully vaccinated in the European Union and the United States. Previously, only vaccines that had been given in the United Kingdom were recognised for inbound travel. The changes mean that anybody fully vaccinated either in the UK, the US or the EU will be able to enter the country as if they have come from a low-risk destination. Now, the low-risk destinations are the green zone when travelling from most mid-risk destinations, which is the amber list of countries. Now, the UK recognises 4 vaccines, those being the Moderna vaccine, you have to have 2 doses. AstraZeneca, again, you have to have the 2 doses. Biotech Pfizer, you have to have the 2 doses, and the Janssen vaccine, which is only the 1 dose. In conjunction, obviously, with the news that US visitors will now be able to enter without the need to quarantine if vaccinated, airlines such as BA and United Airlines were quick to increase their schedule of flights departing the US for England. BA have increased flights between New York, JFK and Heathrow from 17 flights a week to 21, and that's from August to 16th, and from Los Angeles and Chicago to Heathrow from 7 to 10 flights a week. Services from Los Angeles will further increase to 14 a week from August to 23rd, and flights between Seattle and Heathrow increase from 4 a week to 7. United Airlines also announced that they will be increasing their offerings of flights from the USA to England to over 40 weekly non-stop flights.
Wow. And we have some opening up on the Canadian side of things.
We do indeed. So Canada has been closed down for quite a while, isn't it? As we know, and they did actually put mandatory quarantine in place. But beginning August the 9th, fully vaccinated citizens and permanent residents of the United States who are currently residing in the US will be permitted to enter Canada. Other international travellers, i.e. from Europe, may also be allowed to enter Canada beginning September the 7th. That's provided the COVID-19 epidemiology remains favourable. This is what the Canadian government announced in a statement this past week. Entry to Canada will continue to be prohibited for all foreign travellers, unfortunately, who are not fully vaccinated. US travellers must provide proof they've been vaccinated with one of the approved vaccinations. Again, these are the Pfizer, the Moderna, AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson for entry into Canada. Also, in another change to policy, fully vaccinated travellers will not need a post-arrival test. That's unless they've been randomly selected at the port of entry to complete a COVID-19 molecular test. So it won't be everybody on arrival. It will just be a select few, a bit like when you're in the line and they give you a pat down. So it's not going to be everyone. So hopefully, fingers crossed, it shouldn't make queues too long for people. All travellers coming into Canada as well, regardless of vaccine status, will need a negative PCR or molecular test, and that has to be dated within 72 hours of entry.
Well, that's good. You know, that's smart. We've talked about this before. You know, it just makes sense. It doesn't matter whether you're vaccinated or not, you can still carry the virus. So it just makes sense for people to be tested prior to, you know, getting on board a plane or going anywhere, you know, to have that test and, you know, off you go. You're not going to spread it anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfect sense, isn't it? I mean, it's better to be safe than sorry, I suppose. And, you know, at least if these countries are now starting to open up like Canada and the UK, so it's hopefully, fingers crossed, we are going in the right direction once more.
Now, what's going on with Italy?
Yeah, so the Italian authorities, they've announced that the country will now recognize the COVID-19 certificates issued by 5 countries outside of the European Union. As such, based on the new regulation, vaccination certificates and negative COVID-19 test results and recovery certificates issued by the following third countries will be recognized in Italy, those being from the United States, Canada, Israel, Japan, and the United Kingdom. Basically, this means that arrivals from the US, Canada, Israel, and Japan will no longer be subject to Italy's quarantine requirement, as travelers from these areas can now use the certificates issued by their country's authorities in order to avoid such a requirement. However, this rule will not apply to persons arriving from the United Kingdom, even though Italy has decided to recognize their health passes. Basically, travellers arriving from the UK are still going to be subject to a 5-day quarantine requirement when entering Italy. That's regardless of their vaccination status, whether they've had it or whether they've not had it, they're still going to have to do the 5-day quarantine, unfortunately. This requirement is going to be enforced until at least August the 30th and is due to the Delta COVID variant.
All right. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the U.S. reopening, and we've been hearing this for like a month or 2 months, and it's sort of come and gone. What's going on there? Because I think that news has changed once again.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not good news. I mean, we talked literally 2 weeks ago. You know, we were hopeful, and we talked about it on this show that we were hopeful that the US government were going to put in place or announce at least a timeline of when tourists would be allowed to back into the US from the red zone countries. Unfortunately, this week hopes have been dashed once more again, as they've now decided that they're not going to reopen anytime soon. In actual fact, they've decided they're not now going to reopen at least through the summer. So we're going to be looking until at least, I would imagine, probably September, October time before we're looking at any kind of announcement. But yeah, unfortunately, again, it's still the same situation. Red zone countries, unless you've got a B1, B2 or a C1D visa and are going for work on a vessel in the US waters, then unfortunately you can't enter the country.
Now that starts raising concerns because, you know, when we're talking about the yachting industry, Fort Lauderdale International Boat Show is one of the big ones, or is the big one around the world. And that is at the end of October this year. So is it going to be an international boat show this year, as it wasn't last year? But is it going to be this year? It all depends on whether or not the US opens the borders.
It's going to be touch and go. You know, it's from the announcement that was put out. I mean, I've got to say, you know, within the travel industry, we were pretty hopeful it was going to be opening up. You know, that was the general consensus. Not just with travel companies, but also with the airlines and stuff. It did genuinely seem that they were going to be opening up sometime soon, or at least have a time frame in place that we could work towards. But that's been completely shut down, especially with the news that they're now not going to do it at all this summer. So it's going to be close. It's really going to be close with regards to FLIBs.
Well, I'm supposed to be going.
Let's keep our fingers crossed.
Yes, and toes and everything else you can possibly cross.
Or the alternative is you're going to have to do your seaman courses.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll get right on that, you know, from home.
All that spare time you got.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, even if I had the spare time, can you see me going out on the sea to do sea courses with that spare time?
Captain Maria, I can see it.
Yeah, I'd sink the boat, guaranteed. Just by stepping on board, it would probably, you know, as I came on the aft deck, it would start to sink. I guarantee you, that's just me. Yeah.
Let's hope that you're not going to do any presenting from FLIBs on a super yacht, because you've just given that the kiss of death.
Oh my word. Oh, anyway, carrying on. Lufthansa. See, I can't even speak. I only had one cup of coffee this morning.
Yeah, so Lufthansa, the German carrier, basically what they're doing is to fill its empty economy seats. Lufthansa has devised a seating product branded Sleeper Row. Basically, it consists of a row of 3 to 4 seats for one passenger. It's going to be launched as from tomorrow, August the 2nd, and will be offered on long-haul flights of 11 hours or more. Basically, it's going to cover destinations, obviously subject to travel restrictions at the time, such as the US West Coast, Central and South America, South Africa, and the Far East. The fees to have Sleeper Row is a per flight fee of euros 159 through to euros 229, depending on the route you're taking. Now, unfortunately, the downside to this is you can't book the Sleeper Row in advance. Travelers can only reserve the block of seats at check-in or at the gate, and this is purely due to the fact it depends on how many economy seats are going to be sold at that time. If there's space, then they're going to do it. If there's not space, it's not going to be available. So it's not something you can plan for, unfortunately. It's basically rock up, go to check-in, ask them if Sleeper Row is available on the flight. If it is, and you want to pay the money, then you can go ahead with it. But unfortunately, it's not something a travel agent is going to be able to help you with.
Now, what airline was that again?
That's Lufthansa and not Lufthansa, I think, as you named them. But to be fair, it's usually me who trips over words, not you, Ria. So it's a game.
Look, we all have our on days.
Yeah, we do.
Saudi Arabia have made some announcements that
It has, yeah.
not possibly all that popular, to be honest.
It's just absolutely bonkers. I mean, I'm denied whether to talk about it or not, but I think it's important in the grand scheme of where we're going to be with COVID going forward. I know this is quite out there, to be honest with you, and I don't see many countries following suit, but I think it's important to talk about anyway. So all airlines based in Saudi Arabia this week have received a directive from the General Authority of Civil Aviation stating that only vaccinated citizens can travel internationally. Unvaccinated citizens will no longer be allowed to leave the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and the new rule comes into force from August the 9th. On top of that as well, though, this week, the Ministry of Interior also warned vaccinated citizens against travelling to countries on the Kingdom's no-fly list. Their red list includes the UAE, Libya, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, see, I'm at it now as well, Turkey, Armenia, Ethiopia, Somalia, Congo, Afghanistan, Venezuela, and Belarus. Anyone caught traveling to any of those countries will face a travel ban and be unable to leave the kingdom for up to 3 years.
Now I do understand, blocking people from traveling to certain countries, but the travel ban, there is other ways of blocking them from traveling to certain countries. I know in the past, that had happened, for the US, for example, Cuba, way back in the 80s or 70s or whenever that was. You weren't allowed to travel to Cuba because of sanctions, etc. So it's not new. But in this case, these countries are countries that have, the deadly variant of this disease, and it's safety first. But I think they're taking it that step further that is just kind of draconian, really.
It is. I mean, to put a blanket ban on people to say that they can't leave the kingdom is, it doesn't sit right with me, I've got to say. But, at the end of the day, what can you do? Yeah.
Governments the world over.
Indeed. Yeah, it's a very hardline stance anyway, that's for sure.
Yeah. Now, we've had a crew question this week. What's going on there?
We did. So we received a question this week from All at Sea Phil. Now, I'm pretty sure that's his handle and not the birth name he was given by his parents. But that's the only name I've got, unfortunately. So we're going to have to call him All at Sea Phil. So All at Sea Phil wanted to know whether there's been a change in the rules with regards to UK seafarers entering Brazil. The bad news, Phil, is that this past week just gone, Brazil did announce that there is now restrictions on passengers traveling from either UK, India, or South Africa from entering the country. I did do further digging to see if there were any exemptions, but unfortunately, at this moment in time, there is no exemptions for seafarers, so you cannot enter at the moment.
Isn't Brazil dealing with just as bad as the UK or anyone else at the moment?
Yeah, I think so. I think the Brazilian, do they have prime minister or president? I'm not quite sure what they have, but wasn't he the one who was basically a denier of COVID and basically just let it run wild? So to now block people from UK, India, and South Africa seems a very strange step. But then again, we're talking about governments and the wonderful and weird things they do. So nothing surprises us anymore.
Do you know what? I think this has just proven to the world just what we've allowed governments to get away with. These are supposed to be elected officials, coming together to make our countries run properly. And it just blanket across the world. I don't care, what type of government you have. It has just seen an absolute failure of the ability to think, just practical thoughts. Yeah. And it's kind of a sad day. I don't know what else to say. The thing is, though, is that it's not really their fault. It's the fact that we as the people have elected them in straight across the board. It's our fault, really, at the end of the day.
Exactly right. It is, isn't it? We put the people in power to represent us. And unfortunately, on numerous occasions, we've been let down, I would say, to say the least.
I mean, I hate to be political. Well, no, not really. I love being political. But you know me. And usually I'm on the wrong side of the politics of a situation. Who knew? But yeah.
Surprise, surprise.
I know, right? Shocker. It's Rhea. But yeah, I just, I don't know. It is what it is. And I would, yeah, I can't go any further than that because
No,
I could get
I mean,
myself into trouble, right?
you can go down a rabbit hole, can't you, if you start talking about governments and the
Yeah.
decisions they make. Yeah.
And this is exactly how I get myself into trouble on a daily basis by not leaving my home.
Exactly right.
There's no filter between here and here. I was born that way.
That's right.
Or here and here, for that matter.
I do know. Yeah.
I do know, but it still doesn't stop me.
No, exactly.
You either love me or hate me. That's it. There's no middle area. There's no vanilla here.
Well,
Right,
we love you
Lee?
anyway.
Sorry?
I said, well, we love you anyway, so it's all good.
Oh, thanks, Lee. It's been an absolute pleasure as per usual.
Always my pleasure. So thanks for having me once more.
I know. Well, we'll see you again here next week. Exact time, exact place, you know.
Sounds good.
Once again, I have to say thank you to the audience for bearing with us or bearing with me. Lee, is always a pleasure. Myself, on the other hand, sometimes difficult. Crew Travel is brought to you weekly by Blue Marine Travel, who haven't lost a passenger since Lee Harris was born back in the 70s. My name is Rhea. I have been your host. We'll see you again next week.